Welcome everybody. I just did a small introduction, but my name's Troy. I head up Transformative Technologies Australasia, or part of one of the driving teams that helping to create awareness around transformative technologies. And that's essentially what we're doing collectively as part of a global movement headed up by Nicole Bradford and Jeffrey Martin, and really supported with Bipolar, is to create a global ecosystem to support entrepreneurs and innovators that are building technologies and services that can fundamentally help improve, calling it emotional health, well-being, and human thriving, human consciousness. And so within Australia, we have a growing group of entrepreneurs that are doing this. Kim is one of them from Positive Prime that I've met, and as soon as I met Kim, I fell in love with the product, which is Positive Prime, which is the foundation for conversation today. And I'm just gonna do a little introduction. So before I do that, like Transformative Technologies is about supporting the entrepreneurs and innovators. And so part of what I do is through I Am Connected is we apply these technologies. So part of the conversation I want to have today is around how we're applying technologies like Positive Prime. But Kim, she's currently one of the world's leading thinkers in positive psychology, which has provided the foundation to create the Positive Prime platform. But Kim is no like newbie in the well-being space. Coming from a corporate background initially, she moved in to the wellness industry, and she's got an extensive career where she previously founded Lithos Therapy, which is, for me, an easy way to say it is hot stone massage. And that enabled Kim to travel the globe training people like therapists how to actually use Lithos Therapy, hot stone massage. In addition to that, Kim's a best-selling author. She wrote a book called I Am Grateful for Life. And how many copies did you sell? How many copies were sold for that, Kim, worldwide?
Oh goodness, it was 150,000 within its first year, and quite frankly, I kind of lost count. Interestingly enough, I haven't reprinted it, but there's such an increasing interest in it, so you just never know what might come in the next couple of months or years.
Gratitude, just diversing for a sec, is one of those go-to things that people always fall back to, because it's such an important thing, is to create those vibrations of gratitude, right? So let's put in a bid for the reprint. But just to finish off, like you also, you're a sought-after world-class keynote speaker, and you own a mind spa called Serafini Mind Spa, which is an exclusive wellness retreat on Australia's Sunshine Coast, up in around Noosa area, I believe, in Queensland. So super stoked that you're taking the time out to jump in and have a conversation with me today, and everybody that was able to tune in. And so I just wanted to thank you for taking the time to jump in. Thanks, Kim.
Thank you, Troy. We have a mutual admiration, respect society here for each other. The work that Troy's doing in the world is desperately needed. It's so important. It's really substantial, and it'll become even more significant. It's a blessing, actually, real blessing, that we get to connect and collaborate and co-create and continue to pull back the covers to see what else is possible. What else is possible?
Break paradigms, like ingrained thoughts and ways of doing things. And what I love, and it's got to the point where now's the time. I love what Nicole says, or she shares. Like she talks about a J-curve, how technology, like Gordon Moore wrote a law, or suggested a law back in the 60s, that technology, the capacity for technology would double every 2 years. And that held true up until recently, but now tech's got to the point where it's gone exponential. So technology is on this J-curve. But we see our humanness, our consciousness are still on this linear curve, and there's this huge gap that's formed between consciousness and our technology. And so part of what transformative technology is pointing that technology back down to us as humans. So it's taking the technologies that have been taxing our cognition, taxing our well-being, and taxing our relationships, our connection to self, and how do we use those technologies to help us to spiral up? is to become more conscious, because we've got people out there like Elon Musk that are suggesting, like that, AI is going to take over, and you can see why when you look at the J curve, and they're suggesting there's going to be a singularity point where technology's intelligence will surpass ours. So it's really important that our technology works for us, because at the moment, a lot of the smartest minds in the world are working on the algorithms which are learning us better than we know ourselves. And in doing so, we'll fundamentally be able to manipulate us. Click on this ad, click on this ad, make us feel bad about being who we are currently. So I think this is really important work. Our global vision with Transformative Technologies is to help elevate the consciousness of 2 billion people by 2050. And at that point, it reaches a tipping point where we start a revolution, where it's a whole other way of being. And I see Positive Prime is a key part of doing that. And the work that we're doing as I Am Connected is how do we integrate these technologies? How do we use these practically? So it's part of the conversation we want to have today. And I was fortunate enough to actually create a session with Kim recently, which is called Awakening. And I encourage you, if you haven't, and I'll put some information around this in the recording, but you can get that session for free. And it's basically just reminding us who we are. And we'll talk more about what a session actually is. But I wanted to throw to you now, Kim, and just talk us a little bit about what was the inspiration behind Positive Prime? Because I know in our conversations you actually said, it was a divine channeling, like this technology. I haven't seen anything like it anywhere else around the world, so it's really unique.
Oh, thank you. Yes, it is really, I think, an incredible realization of the synthesis of so many different concepts and ideas that have really collapsed and created something new, different, revolutionary, leading. What's the inspiration? Well, let me give you a tiny little background. I'll try to speed through at least the last 25 years. I was really lucky, graduated from business school at Bond University, which is Australia's only Ivy League university. It was an amazing environment when we think about epigenetics now, in terms of really infusing today's Australian youth with an entrepreneurship. It was just really a part of the fabric of that institution. I, of course, wanted to travel the world and take it on and rise to the top of the corporate ladder, because I thought that that's what, someone who was smart and ambitious and dynamic did and would do. I went to the United States. I couldn't convince the US government that I had a skill no other American had, and that was like 25 plus years ago. So of course I didn't get a green card and I didn't stay. I had a nice time though. I did go to London, but I had a really fanciful idea. My surname is Serafini, which is Italian, and I kind of thought, wow, I need my own fashion house, like Armani or Gucci, Serafini, kind of fits, right? And I had a fascination, a curiosity with the fashion industry already by that stage. I'd worked in Sydney in PR and in modeling and so forth and so forth. Anyway, so I kind of thought, I need to go and live in Paris and I need to learn French and so forth. And to cut an extremely long story short, I ended up applying to Central St Martin's, which was the London School of Fashion then. And within about a semester, they kind of told me I was talentless and useless and I would never make it. I couldn't draw, right? That was a really pivotal moment, because I decided that I must use my commerce degree, and I got involved essentially working with Selfridges. At the time, that was just the most innovative, avant-garde fashion house. There were all of these consignments inside this large department store. And so I whet my appetite for commerce. What happened though was I had been applying for other jobs, and I got one with a change management consultancy. And at the time, it was extremely prestigious as a firm. It was called Smythe George Lambert, SDL. And they had, of the FTSE 50, the top 30 were all clients. So it was an incredibly coveted opportunity that I was going for. I landed it. I then worked harder than anybody else I know. And I had a career trajectory that was almost vertical, and I ended up the global head of communications and change for the 10th largest company in the world, which was part of a merger, right, of a fast-moving consumer goods company. And for people who were looking on, my life was charmed. I was starting to struggle internally with my own imposter syndrome. I was young, and even though I was gifted, it was still really challenging. And people around the boardroom table would look, and I'd be looking at them, and I kind of think, oh, I don't want to spend my whole lifetime climbing the corporate ladder to get here and be like you. I became interested in professional development, personal development, self-improvement, and I would go to spas, like really amazing day spas, which were just emerging as this, force. And in Europe, of course, where the Roman bathing system was, or Turkish baths, the spa industry has been global and amazing for thousands of years. So cut a long story short, I'm lying on the massage table and I'm thinking, I wonder where the margins are in this industry, and what do you reckon the great costs are? And from a CapEx perspective, it's a big risk to do all of this infrastructure and these water treatments, but health comes through water. And so I could not let go. My brain would not go quiet. I just had this insatiable aspect to myself, and I knew that I was going to burn out. And there was that intuitive part of me that was like, if I do not take care of myself, my brain and my body, I'm in trouble here. And of course, like self-fulfilling prophecies, that's kind of what happened. So I went to this Anthony Robbins Life Mastery University program. It was like, I remember it was like £20,000 20 plus years ago. That was a lot of money then. And I learned about the mind from Tony Robbins in a way that was totally, completely fresh to me. Like I'd never even considered half the concepts that he talked about. And it literally it forced me to go down a rabbit hole, which I haven't come out of. Fast forward 20 years, I have created a couple of businesses. I found that I really wanted to leave the corporate world, and yet I have so much to offer in terms of my insights about personal change. I actually, in that period of time, became a qualified sports therapist, like an exercise physiologist. And here in Australia, we kind of refer to my skills like being an osteopath, not really a physiotherapist. And that was actually what then started my journey in the spa industry and my creation of what is now known as hot stone massage. I trained over 5,000 therapists over about 8 years. I set up distributorships in India and Singapore and Dubai with all of these amazing people in the industry. And I was really well respected and loved. But I have to tell you, as an entrepreneur, whew, my golly gosh, right? So I was growing fast, and I think I got a little bit ahead of myself, and I invested in a teeth whitening product, and it nearly sent me broke. And then I invested in an Ayurvedic organic skincare range to import here into Australia when the US dollar was like almost as it is today in 2020 right now. And it literally meant these products coming in that we were selling through the Byron Resort Spa that were hideously expensive. It just wasn't going to work, right? So I took a step back after going and training a whole heap of Ayurvedic doctors and therapists at a place called Ananda in the Himalayas. And I was really new to being exposed to Eastern traditions, rituals, philosophies, traditional Indian medicine, traditional Chinese medicine, Hinduism, Buddhism, and so forth. And about 1,000 of these varying pearls on a necklace started to actually become strung in my mind. And my book about gratitude, my work as a corporate change management consultant, my journey through the spa industry, what I learned from thousands of therapists, much more than what I taught them, my appreciation for quantum physics, like hot stone massage, let's just break it down, is about heated and chilled marble rock instruments that are sculptures that you use as massage implements, and the heated ones, it's like a heat wave that becomes an ultrasound, and there's some science around it. So I was always about validating and verifying what it was that I was suggesting would accelerate healing. And Positive Prime, the project that is my entire life right now, I'm so obsessed with it, it's really the culmination of all of that, right? And it's how do we actually heal ourselves through our own minds? How do we bypass these aspects of ourselves that are like obstacles, like the barbed wire that you kind of need to scale if you want to get to the subconscious. And how do you have something that's available really fast for today, because we've scientifically proven it works inside only 3 minutes? And how do you make sure that it's really affordable and really accessible so that you don't have to go to the Himalayas and meditate for 21 days at an Ayurvedic 6-star health resort to actually have enlightenment? Is that actually possible here right now, no matter what's going on in your everyday life, being a super busy mother, father, entrepreneur, therapist, teacher, etc., etc., etc.? So it's a really compressed way of kind of helping people to understand that the formula for what we call a positive prime session, so I'll explain what that is and we'll give you an example of it. It's actually so many very interesting aspects, and it's the alchemy that's created when they're combined that gives you this exponential effect from the product. By the way, the product is available for free for everybody on the planet, and there are aspects that you can pay for if you want to unlock some special, additional, unique functionality, right? But my intention was for the person who's really struggling mentally and emotionally, going through chemotherapy in a hospital, and someone says, hey, this will help you calm down, they can actually have it for free. For the employee going through a change management process who's totally freaking out because of the uncertainty and ambiguity and they're having panic attacks, I want them to be able to access this brilliance for free, right? That's first and foremost. So really my intention is when we start to feel more peaceful inside, because our brains, our minds are feeling peaceful and all the brainwave activity looks like we're more in a, delta or gamma state, right? We're actually at peace. And when we are at peace, we radiate peace, we broadcast peace. And that's probably about peace on the planet. And that's about the way that we approach the environment peacefully. And I could go on and say, like Mr. Universe, oh, I'm all about world peace. But actually, I'm all about world peace, right? That's kind of the truth. And what I found in those spa environments and through those experiences was peace from this crazy life I was living, where I was jumping from New York to London and New York to London every single week as a change management consultant. Like, that's real. People actually deal with the most immense amount of pressure. But we'll all break if we don't have something that we can use, that we can tap into on a daily basis, that brings peace within. So, and interestingly, the science, I just want to say this before I go any further, the science of positive priming has been proven to also boost performance. So I have to be honest, being really selfish about peace for yourself is just the most exquisite and extraordinary state to be in for increases in performance. And we've seen increases in profitability, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So there are all these business applications and there are all of these educational applications as well. So, whew.
Cool. Thanks for the backstory. It really is a remarkable story, and it's like obviously a testament to getting to this point and the depth of what it actually gone into creating it. Looking at this, I've been using Positive Prime since February 2019, so it's a year now, and just over a year. So there's lots of different components. So I wanted to sort of unpack the components of it, and if I could just sort of lead the way and just get me where I miss any. Like for me, like there's a theme around the sessions that are created. And we'll talk more about the sessions but there's a theme, like for me, mine's about awakening. So it's remembering like who you are innately as a person beyond the mental noise that we get locked into, like connecting back to our essence. But then there's also, so that's like a conditioning component to it. But then there's like the positive psychology element to it. So it's about shifting your state because a lot of the images have been, all of the images have been hand curated. And I know that was the case when I put mine together to elicit that positive state. And so as part of that, then the content as part of the theme is actually then imprinting on the unconscious mind. So it's like we are consciously then choosing a program or a way of thinking, a way of feeling, which then influences is a way of behaving. So essentially we're consciously choosing how we want to actually show up by the theme that we're actually watching. So they're just a couple of components, and like there's affirmations. That is another component that you build into the session, which reinforces the theme of what it is that the images are depicting. So looking at that, so you've got a theme, you've got affirmations that are supporting that, and it's kind of like, we call it a session, but it's kind of like a program as well, like a mental program that we're installing. So think maybe Matrix, but maybe we're a little bit early stage, maybe beta version of the Matrix, and being able to plug into a program. And in addition to that, like another element is like the whole manifestation element, and which I've used, and I'm going to share some stories as we get into this. So for the people that are watching this, like our ability to be able to, and you talked about the paid feature, and it's cheap. It's like 150, 160 US a year, or $10 or $11 US a month. And you can upload your own images amongst that. So as you're being positively primed, so think vision board, like all the things, and we'll talk more about the reticular activating system in a minute, the science of why this actually works. You're uploading all your images in amongst the images that are positively priming you. And so unconsciously, it's going in there and imprinting. And like, as I suggested, I'm going to share some stories about stuff that has showed up in my life. And I look back and, wow, it was in my positive prime session. And it's just been effortless. So like, I guess, again, just unpacking. So there's the theme, there's the affirmations, which reinforce that, which create the programs, which essentially fundamentally helping to create who we are and how we're showing up. And, you know, like then there's the unconscious programming of integrating our own images, so a manifestation element, so actually creating beyond yourself, but utilizing it as a tool to have stuff show up in your world. So what did I miss?
You did brilliantly and beautifully, almost perfect. So you're right. I want everybody to imagine that a theme or a subject that you're choosing relates to an area of your life. It could be relationships, finances, it could be about confidence, or something you want to develop like patience, etc. And you're going to watch something that, let's just use a term we all understand, super fancy, sophisticated slideshow. Very carefully curated specific images. I'll give you a couple of examples. And really precisely written words. Yes, there are some affirmations. There are also some questions for the appreciative inquiry process if you follow along with psychology. There's also aspects of associative conditioning that is built into the formula. And I think most importantly, aspects for the way that we can direct or instruct our other than consciousness. So there's a couple of things I need to unpack here. There's, and I'm going to give you some things to visualize. There's a session you're watching. We call it a session because it's not an MP3, it's proprietary to us. It's something totally unique that we had to create because nothing like it exists on the planet.
And can I just interject for a sec? So it's like 1,000 images, and yes, they're shuffled every time. So there's not the brain just goes, like if you're watching a movie, it's just like, I've seen this before, but this is new and fresh every time, and you don't fatigue from it. It's actually the same, like you're watching it for the first time every time, which is the part of the technology.
Totally. And Troy, to your point, from a neuroscience point of view, you need novelty, right? If you want to actually bring about changes, you need novelty. That's one of the ingredients necessary for bringing about cognitive change, moving the needle mentally, right? So you have 1,000 frames, let's call them slides, some of them for images and some of them words. And from the perspective that you are trying to learn something new, or you're trying to change something about yourself, we as human beings, we have a couple of insatiable needs. One of them is to be right. When the saber-toothed tiger was approaching us in the caveman days, the reptilian, the ancient part of our brains was totally wired to protect us. I'm sure you all know this. And so we reject anything that we don't actually quite understand, anything new, because we're not sure yet whether that thing, whatever it is going to kill us, right? So until we can make sense of it, we reject it. And we do it in like fractions of milliseconds we don't even understand, in pre-conscious processing, not even in consciousness, right? And that's got nothing to do with subconscious, superconscious, other than conscious or unconscious. There are all of these different things that we're now starting to understand. Like there is a consciousness in cells in your stomach. And so it's not really the mind in the brain. And I could go on and on for another day just about this aspect, right? But we also have this need to find evidence to support our beliefs because they help us to feel safe. So an affirmation like, I am amazing, or I am smart, or I am successful, we go and gather evidence from our environment and from our memories and from experiences to build that up so that we've got scaffolding that holds it in place, right? So in the first instance, when you first think that, it's like through a virgin rainforest. And then you're hacking your way through that rainforest over and over and over and over and over again, the more you actually find evidence to support a new belief. But if someone met you on that pathway and you admired and you respected them and you were in a heightened state emotionally, like it could be super angry, or it could be super frustrated, or it could be in like elation like you've never felt before, and someone said to you, opposite you, you are so courageous, you would adopt that belief without any repetition just because it comes with a you are, right?
Could I just interject for a sec? Because part of my experience, and this is a rebuttal that I know I had in the past, and it's like if we've got a belief that we are not that, but we are sort of saying like I'm courageous, but we know in our heart that we're not actually courageous. Like then you're coming up against the mind. But what I love about the positive prime tech is that, like, I encourage people to, like you suggested, in 3 minutes. So put it on a speed of 3 minutes, and then you can't consciously actually read what's actually being said. So it's going into the other than conscious. So it's actually creating that program and working on priming the reticular activating system for you. So it's surpassing the conscious judging mind.
Perfect and totally accurate, right?
Yeah.
So what we probably haven't said is inside our proprietary player with 1,000 frames going past, you can speed it up or slow it down, speed it up or slow it down. The slower it is, the more that you can ruminate on the messages and the images, and that's necessary for part of the experience. The other part of the experience that is critical is that you need to speed it up so fast that you can't actually process it consciously and make sense of it. So our defenses that stop us from changing are there to protect us, and we need to bypass the subconscious and go to the other than conscious or the superconscious, the parts of us that the ancient Egyptians knew we had all of these different senses, not just 6, right? And we actually, that's why epigenetics is a thing, because we, for example, when I smile at you, right, irrespective of whether you are smiling or you feel happy, the mirror neurons in your brain, which are basically here, they process from what is coming through the retina. So what you see, you're seeing my smile, your mirror neurons, oh wow, think that you are smiling, sends messages to your endocrine system, and hormonally you produce more serotonin, dopamine and oxytocin and these neurotransmitters and endorphins that make you feel awesome, that are necessary to boost your performance. What do we have to do? We have to show you pictures of a particular type of smile called a Duchenne smile. And if we do that enough, we can actually have your body physiologically reacting. And that's one of the types of images we say that's in this formula. There are actually 17 types of images, and each of them I would need 17 more 5-minute pieces to explain: mirror neurons, smiles, Duchenne, endorphins, etc. Right? Now, when you watch it quickly, instead of, in the iceberg analogy, floating in an ocean, instead of you trying to wrestle with your conscious mind, your logical part of you, the rationality part of you, which is the iceberg above the waterline, most people spend an enormous amount of money and time thinking, oh, I need to change my subconscious. That's the iceberg underneath the waterline. I'm actually pretty famous for being one of the first people to actually say this, and I've taught now so many people because we have a certification program. Don't worry about the iceberg. Worry about the ocean in which the iceberg is bobbing around, right? Worry about what's out there. So it's not conscious, it's not subconscious, it's other than consciousness. And that soup, or that whatever it is that we're swimming in this consciousness, that is where we need to create change. Because out of that, basically, the iceberg is perfect, and you don't need to be wrestling with this huge part that's unseen and often misunderstood, which is called the subconscious. What we have created is not, I repeat, not anything that I think a lot of people think, oh, some of these mind tools are subliminal. It is so not even close to subliminal, right? It's a whole completely unique category. So Positive Prime works because we're imprinting in the ocean, right? We're actually changing the quality of the ocean. And from maybe a universal perspective, that could be, you know, we're not trying to change Mother Earth, we're actually trying to change the entire cosmos that we exist in.
And we look at, like, a great book is Lost Connection, that I was just referred to by somebody on this call. Hey, Jamie, is they talk about in that book, you know, like how our culture defines, you know, like how we're showing up, like it's a cause of a lot of the depression that we're actually feeling and suppression that we're feeling. So what you're talking about is changing your environment, changing society, like the way that the ocean. I love that. It's a great analogy.
Yeah. So what I
sorry,
said
did I
about
just say one more?
though, Troy, that's why Positive Prime is as it is, because I knew that change happens in the ocean. It doesn't happen to the iceberg, right? The iceberg is actually just an obstacle. It's an illusion. No, I mean, seriously, it trips people up. It's what causes the Titanic to sink. No, actually, it wasn't really that, but we can't go into that. So my point is that I said about creating a tool that real people with real lives, with real opportunities and real problems could actually use in the real world, right?
Can I just say though, like the Titanic, from what I understand, obviously wasn't there, but the story that I've heard is that it was their push, the society, like their need, the environment, the culture. I needed to be on this side of from here to here in a certain period of time. So it was that actually drove them into the iceberg, trying to push the boundaries. So it was actually the story around the boat and the iceberg that actually make it sink.
Yeah, and there's apparently another aspect to that story about the noise and the distraction. So what actually happened was all of the passengers were so egotistical about them being on the Titanic, they were sending all of these telegrams, and the telegrams all had to be processed through essentially one man doing telegram communication. And what actually happened was the warnings that they were off track and there was a obstacle were actually not able to be received because of this clog in the system by this messaging system, right? So whatever you want to believe about that.
We digress a little bit.
When we want to change, we need to actually give ourselves the best opportunity.
Can I just interject here, because it's something that's relevant to this culture component, and this is like for the business owners that are out there that are looking to work on like the culture of their organization. This is a fantastic tool. You can create your own session like I have with I Am Connected that's relevant to your organization, and then just have your values and like what it means to actually be an employee of your organization instilled in this, and you know, encourage your employees to put their own images up into it, and then you've got a really tight tool that they can watch in 3 minutes a day that's going to positively prime them. It's going to help them manifest, and they're basically going to be, you know, like part of your tribe.
That's a beautiful story. We've got a little bit of a case study. So to bring everybody up to date, I did one of those radical things and sent an email to the world's leading, highest profile Harvard darling who's on the speaker circuit, you know, charges $50,000 for 1 hour, etc. His name's Sean Acor. Amazing, extraordinary, wonderful man, brilliant, beautiful a human being too. And he, if you go and Google Sean, S-H-A-W-N, Acor, A-C-H-O-R, and the top TED Talks of all time in the business category, Sean was definitely up there at the top some 5 years ago, still up there in the top 10. And I sent him an email and I said to him, I've created this tool, this intervention, this concept, and I would really love for you to look at it, review it, and give me some feedback. I've done a little bit of testing with some sticks in people's mouths, cortisol before and after watching, and we're seeing some actual reactions. I'm not a scientist. I need to bounce some ideas off somebody I really admire and respect. Well, I could not have known this, but Sean had just done a deal with the Oprah Winfrey Network through a connection that he made with Ariana Huffington, who at the time was still the head of HuffPost. And Oprah was doing O courses and she wanted to do one on the science of happiness. And she asked Sean to basically do the instructional design and deliver the Science of Happiness course with her. And of course it was being broadcast through the Oprah Winfrey Network. Anyway, Sean said, I know of nothing like this on the planet. Can we please include your tool in our Science of Happiness course? And I just hyperventilated at that opportunity. I wish that there'd been $1 for every time it was seen, but actually we did it for PR purposes. Well, Sean's gone from strength to strength and strength to strength. And the reason why I tell you this is because the global head of a publicly listed Australian travel company just absolutely adores Sean and his work. And she found out that we'd done this project and she dug a little bit deeper and she found out that I was Australian. So she said, can you come in? We're having some trouble. We bring on all these new recruits and we need them to actually have the way of working and the language of the organization kind of embedded within them before they go into the retail environment, and they go through this 3-week internal training program, like professional development program. So we actually created specific, tailored, bespoke sessions with their branding, their messages, a couple of images that really brought to life their culture. And here's the very groovy story. Before Positive Prime, on average, a significant percentage of new recruits failed the exam at the end of 3 weeks, and they all reported heightened anxiety that disabled them. And a lot of them were so incredibly upset that they failed because it meant that they wouldn't go into the store, right? What happened after 3 weeks of positive priming with a couple of hundred new recruits was that every single one of them passed the exam and not one of them reported anxiety in the process. Unbelievable. What was even more amazing though was when those new recruits went into the store, the managers of the retail environments went back to head office and said, what did you change? Because all of a sudden, all of these newbies, they all have the lingo down and we're not trying to explain to them what we do and how we do it around here because they already know. And that's because all of that learning went in an accelerated fashion. That's the promise of Positive Prime for no matter what it is that you're trying to learn. So part of our development as a tech company is figuring out what kind of new software we can also add in and bolt on so that we can very quickly curate an enormous number of sessions or programs from an enormous number of clients. Because part of what Sean's research did, I should actually say this, the Oprah Winfrey Network said, no, you cannot include a Positive Prime session as the tool that makes people happier. And he said, but there's nothing else like it and it makes people happier. They made them do the efficacy testing that scientifically proved it worked because that's how powerful the Oprah Winfrey Network is, right? So Sean and his wife, Michelle Gillen, have a research institute, and people like Google pay them $1 million for certain projects, etc. They actually did it for us as a gift. I couldn't imagine how many hundreds of thousands of dollars it would have cost me here in Australia through an educational institution to make it happen. By the way, the opportunity would have evaporated by the time I'd even tried to make it happen. That's another story. But you know what? What they found was that people learn more faster, retain it for longer, and can recall it. And there's actually changes in implicit and explicit memory from absorbing content, viewing a really pretty slideshow with amazing images that make you really feel better. So it's kind of an interesting thing. Troy, the opportunities for teachers in institutions, the opportunity for training and facilitators in large organizations, it's unbelievable, really, it is. we also know that we have to move with the times, and we have to figure out how we bring this to market in a really commercially viable way really quickly, because it's the kind of thing that I would imagine 99.9% of training and development organizations or coaches or mentors want and need, you know.
Business owners as well, like if you don't define the culture happens organically. So it's such an important component for the reasons that we were talking about before, you know, like culture helps to shape who we are as people. So it's, and in particular in a workplace for business leaders, you know, like our employees and we spend so much time there. So let's, you know, consciously think about, like, what do we want our workplace, what messaging do we want in our workplace, and how do we want our employees to be? Such a powerful tool. And I think that direction is, you know, it's probably right at the very beginning of what the potential for Positive Prime as a tool could be in the workplace. I did want to just touch on, could you just explain the reticular activating system? Because I think that's a key part of, like, how the Positive Prime actually influences the reticular activating system. Because, you know, for years we've heard about vision boards and so forth, but what you're doing is taking that to a whole new level.
Yeah, sure. When we set a goal, our brains make decisions, right? And let's just say you want to buy, everybody knows this example. I tell you not to think of a pink elephant, and tell me, did anyone just not think of a pink elephant, right? Our brains, they receive instructions and they visualize it. That's kind of one aspect of it. Secondary, if you want a VW Golf, for example, and you decide, so you attach some emotion to that goal, what'll happen is that it gives some instructions to this part of your brainstem that now searches your environment for the evidence that's going to match the belief. And the belief you have is that in some way, shape or form, that car is going to make me feel happier, right? Ultimately, at the end of the day, there's a couple of things universally that we all want. One of the criteria is this going to make me feel better? Like, and our language is, will this make me happier? And so we choose lots of things. Pardon?
We've made it important.
Yeah, totally. And the reason why it's important is because we actually want to feel better, right? So it's a biochemical addiction that we have, and it serves us, okay, on the most part. It's kind of where the whole addiction story ends up going down as well. But what happens, of course, is you go out into the world and you see more VW Golfs. And what happens is every time you see one, it triggers you, and your other than consciousness now goes to work for you because you can't help it. And it is going to, almost like you're asleep. You don't actually know what you're really thinking when you're asleep. Your brain is working all the time. There's like 11 million bits of information we actually take in per second, but we only attenuate to 40. And the 40, Sean actually talks about it, it's like a snowstorm, it's a blizzard. And the 40 are the individual snowflakes we want to actually focus in on and concentrate on. And we actually filter out everything else. And so someone like me says, but where does the other 10,900,099, like, if there's 11 million bits of information, where does it go? If it's not, so the truth is it actually does go into your ocean. It's your other than consciousness, and it's going to inform everything else as well. Your reticular activating system serves you to help calm down. Your brain is metabolically expensive, right? It's demanding an enormous amount of energy from your day-to-day, and it's trying to make sense and categorize and put into these little boxes so that you can use it, so that, quite frankly, you can just move through the world and cope and protect yourself and stay safe. Remember, I've said it's all about really staying safe. And so it thinks, oh, if there's this enormous amount of stimuli, I'll only pay attention to that which will help me to be safe and happy, right?
Yeah.
There's an energy, though. So for all of you who are listening, who will go and try Positive Prime, Troy, everybody who has their own piece of content shares it via a referral code. That's our system. What's your referral code?
I believe it's just Troy. So it'll ask you when you're registering. I don't get anything from this, by the way. It's not like I'll get kickbacks. It's because you're signing up for a
but
free
just,
account.
I like being able to track things. Data is everything.
Yeah. And plus you'll get my session Awakening then included in
Correct.
that, I believe. Yeah. So and
Right.
I'd love everybody to have that because I think it's awesome. And
It is awesome.
so Troy, yeah, TR1.
Okay, so then beyond that, we're not suggesting anybody needs to do this, but you can upgrade a subscription and become a premium subscriber, which gives you access to then edit Troy's Awakening. What do you do then? I say this, make sure you curate your own collection of images that make you feel really proud of yourself and really grateful for this amazing life you have. So images of your family members, your pets, images of the highlights of your life that remind you that you can achieve, images of the goals that you have, anything that is actually going to help. And this is a really interesting way for the way that the brain works. Anything that's going to help you feel like you're in the content. I'll give you an example. Let's just say you're not very patient, and I'm not, right? I've done my whole life on acceleration. I really need to learn patience. And, there's a universal law that says that, if I don't learn it, I'll be taught it. So I'd quite frankly like to be proactive about this one. So I'll watch this amazing session, this accelerated program on being patient, on what would I need to think if I was a patient person? Who would I need to be? How would I behave if I was patient? And so there are these principles of developing patience and being patient. Now, it's a great piece of content, but I won't allow it to really rapidly go into my ocean unless I see photographs of myself and my life and what's meaningful to me inside the content. And as I press play tomorrow and the next day and the next day, Troy's already said this, it reshuffles all of them so that they're in a different order. And I'll give you an example why. Let's just say that a puppy dog bit you as a child, and so you've got a trigger for dogs, and it's not a cool one. But you've been to Paris and you had the most exquisite romantic experience in front of the Eiffel Tower, and you love sunflowers. If you see sunflowers and the Eiffel Tower on each side of the dog, that might really be a part of some memory that's actually going to cause your amygdala in your brain to freak out. You can actually create a median. You can actually literally reduce the effects of this. Now, if we have 8 other, so 16 in total on the other side of this, we can actually make sure that the weight, or like the percentage, the average is so tiny that dog no longer triggers you. And this is why we have lots of psychologists and social workers and counselors and physicians who are really interested in what we're doing, people who treat PTSD, who treat depression and anxiety. Now, we haven't done any clinical studies with respect to this. I'd love to be able to do that. However, just go with me. Sometimes the goals that we're pursuing, we're so fixated on, we actually miss the opportunities that exist in the broader realm because we're so laser. It's almost like we're so attached to something. It's the analogy of the butterfly can come down on your hand, but if you actually go to grab it, guess what? You've crushed the butterfly and you've killed it. So sometimes what actually needs to happen in order for you to achieve the goals that you want is that you need to see yourself on that podium, on that stage, in that media, amongst an image selection that is at least 16. And tomorrow you need to see what you want with a different 8 on either side. That's the power of reshuffling. It's called associative conditioning. It's linked to massive breakthroughs in innovative creative thinking, right? So
Cool.
the reason why it helps you to manifest is because it actually helps you to surrender and let go and be in non-attachment.
Can I just share a couple of quick stories on the manifestation element?
Pardon?
Can I share a couple of quick stories?
Yeah, I'd love you to. Please do.
Yeah, so I'll make these as brief as I can, really brief actually. So November 2018, my son was graduating. I wanted to go to a Transformative Technology conference. I couldn't go, so I was tuned into a live stream and I'd seen Jeffrey Martin, who's one of the founders of TransTech, and Sanjay Manachunga. They were doing V-like gamma stimulation into the brain. I'm like, oh, wow, I'd so love to do that. I wish I was there. Oh, boo-hoo. And so then met Kim in February, so a few months later, and I put an image of Jeffrey and an image of Sanjay into my Positive Prime. And as things worked out, I got a grant from the Australian government that I was able to go over and spend some time at the TransTech lab over in Palo Alto. And I didn't even really know what that meant, whether I'd just be dropping in and visiting the people there or who was going to be in the lab. I didn't really know what it was, but I was excited for it. But I knew I was going to spend time with some of the leaders. As it turned out, the lab was in this beautiful mansion down in Redwood City that I got to spend 3 weeks in. And Sanjay and Jeffrey were actually living in the house. So I got to spend three weeks with these guys. Just one of the most amazing memories of my life. And we obviously did the V-light gamma stimulation in this beautiful mansion. So it just showed up. It was just amazing. And another example is like, I had a beautiful memory that I had, and I uploaded it of myself and my dear friend and colleague, Christine. And it was a win that we had, and I uploaded it. And then we were watching, I was showing her my session the other day. She goes, oh, there's an image of us. And we hadn't done really any work together, but then over the last 4 or 5 months, we've done a lot of work and we've got really, really close. And it's since putting that image in there, and all of a sudden it's just sort of that closeness has just showed up. It's just like the butterfly thing that you sort of suggested. They just sort of start fluttering in around you, and then you look around and you go, oh wow, I'm surrounded by everything. Amazing.
Do you know, I of course have hundreds of those stories over the last couple of years, but since I knew that I was going to be spread too thin. So Troy, like, we've got a personal connection, so I can guide you personally and say, hey, go to LinkedIn, save some images, go to Google Images, let's help you get clear about what you want to personalize, etc. But I thought, what if I actually certified a whole heap of coaches, mentors, counselors, social workers, therapists to kind of be extensions of me, and I'll teach them everything that they need to know about the positive psychology and neuroscience and change, and then they can leverage this tool for their own income purposes. And that's been a really, really wonderful program. What I love, right, is the feedback that they are creating and helping to facilitate magic in their clients' lives, in their students' lives, in their members' lives, right? Yep. So it's not only that they were able to essentially become extensions and positive prime professionals in and of their own right, they're creating these incredible manifestation stories for themselves, but they're actually doing it for others. So the ripple effect is, for me, it's the icing on the cake,
So we've got a few minutes left. So I just want to sort of wrap up, sort of start bringing it together. So like for somebody that's watching this, and the guys on the call, Jamie, Brad, Mimi, Nat, Isaac, hey, welcome. I think there's a few others as well that I can't see. So you can register for a free account, and there's lots of sessions on there, which are kind of like programs that you can, depending on what you feel like you need, you can get with your credits, because you get credits when you sign up, and this is all free. And then you just watch them. And I personally watch everything on 3 minutes because I just find, I've got 3 minutes, and it basically shifts my state. So there's a subjective measure, how you're feeling at the beginning, and a subjective measure, how you're feeling at the end. Watch the session 3 minutes, and I'm always feeling better. You'll experience that as well. So that's a really powerful way to use Positive Prime. Next level is to actually pay your $10 US a month, and you can upload your own images in there. So with the free session, that's like what Kim was talking about before. There's 1,000 images. I think there's 800 images, and there's about 200 word cards. So, but amongst those, you can upload yours, and I think it's like 1,000. There's a big upper limit. It's pretty high on the number of images that you can personally curate and put amongst them, and that's like $10 US. So I highly recommend that. That's what I was sort of talking about with how I manifest. And then next level to that is like as a business owner, like looking to create a culture within your organization for your team. Like, it's a really powerful tool to create your own session and even like learn from Kim more about positive psychology and how it works. But then also you're sort of suggesting that coaches can be accredited as a Positive Prime facilitator and and that's what I've done, and done training with Kim around understanding positive psychology, and in basically creating a session that you can then offer to your clients that's specific to whatever your niche is, whether it's finance, or whether it's awakening, or whatever it might be. Have I missed anything? Like, these are the fundamentals of how, like, you can sort of engage with positive prime.
Yeah, no, you've got it. And for me, the highlight of this week is that we've been working on something for a couple of months. So there's a woman named Patty Krummer, in the United States, in Pennsylvania. And I actually worked on a pharmaceutical merger, funnily enough, and lived in central Pennsylvania for 8 months in a Marriott hotel while I did an integration. But that was like 20 years ago. So I've been back to Pennsylvania a couple of times just recently, and we picked up a really significant client, their corporate client. And what we're doing is creating sessions, but it was Patty who went in there and basically pitched the power, the art, and the science of positive priming. And the particular woman who runs this huge company said, it sounds incredibly innovative, and I like the idea of my employees and everybody associated with the company being happier and healthier. I'm all for it. So Patty gets to sell in our corporate program. She gets to make money as a corporate consultant. I love that. I love enabling that, right? What's interesting is that company's now going and gathering their own images, because they're going to actually submit some that's about really their working environments. And then we're actually going to have their session on their website playing in 28,000 retailers on TVs that are going to be displaying that internal website page on the culture, because they're trying to refresh the connection that people have with this particular company and their brand and their story. I just think it's really super cool, and it's so incredibly cheap. I mean, seriously, that's the thing about technology and scalability. Like, we could charge tens of thousands of dollars for this, and we probably should, but I don't want to, right? I want to make it available and affordable. I really want to be able to make it accessible. I want to be able to enable really amazing consultants like Patty out there in the world. Like, how cool is that?
Cool. I wanted to throw it open for questions, sorry, before we wrap up. Does anybody have a question that they'd like to ask Kim? So if you do, just, I believe that you can unmute yourself, so please feel free to do that and jump on in.
In the meantime, go to positiveprime.com, as in positive, the opposite of negative, and prime as in first, positiveprime.com, in case anyone's wondering. I'm Kim Serafini. You spell my surname Serafini. I would love to hear from you. Please reach out and connect with me if you've got an opportunity for me to speak or train, or you want Troy, or you want sessions for your own employees. We've been working with somebody who owns an employee assistance program provider company about integrating positive prime into their mix as a value add. There's 1,001 ideas I'd like to explore. We're really focused on the low-hanging fruit at the moment. And as a tech company and as a founder in this very beautiful infant, fast-growing startup community, we've got a long way to go. Even though we're in revenue, and even though there seems to be a lot of confidence, my golly gosh, we have all sorts of dramas behind the scenes or every day. If it wasn't for positive prime, seriously, this entrepreneurial journey would have broken me for good, completely.
And that's part of the beauty. And like, I guess people often ask me, well, how do you use it? When do you use it? And so for me, it's like, I do my practice in the morning when I get up, kids to school, depending, whatever happens. But then when I sit down in front of my computer, I just jump into positive prime, find the session I want, 3 minutes, and then watch it. And then I get into my workday. If later on during the day I start to feel frazzled, which we all do, our attention gets all over the place, then I, again, just 3 minutes. And it's like an intervention to help bring back that feeling like that you were talking about earlier, that focused feeling, so that you just get out of that fractionated state and recenter, and it's like, oh, okay, now I can think again, and I'm away. So really powerful means to be able to set up your day, great intervention tool throughout the day, and all the while you're priming your other than conscious and your reticular activating system with what it is that you really want. So it's a no-brainer to me.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Cool. Well, I really love just chatting. And you know what? Even more, I just love sharing this because I really think it does have to get out there. I think people are crazy if they're not getting on it, even if it's just the free one. The free one's great. But like, I can't endorse the $10 a month US version. Like, it's not expensive, and essentially, you know, you're basically programming your reality for what you want it to be. Up until, you know, now, up until a certain point in our lives, we don't have a choice of the programs that we get given, but now we do. So it's kind of like, well, you know, you've got a choice, so you take it or you don't. Thanks, Kim, and thanks everybody.
Thank you, and welcome, welcome, welcome. And I already really appreciate you for sharing. Thank you.
Yeah, awesome.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks,
Been a real
everybody.
honor.
Big love.
All right, ciao.
Bye.
Thanks, Matt. Bye.